To lead off this panel is our friend, Kerry, Curran, excuse me, from Catalyst. How are you, Kerry? Are you coming from my hometown in Boston?
I am, yes. Hello, everyone.
Hey, well, welcome. And I want you to, before I let you go, I want to remind you of the last time we hung out at Stein Eriksen drinking wine. I mean, don't you wish we were there right now?
All the time. We were crossing our fingers that would happen again this year. Still,
I know, we're still crossing our fingers, but you know, it's very much a wishful thing. So anyway, I want to let you get started, introduce yourself and the rest of your panel, and have a great time there.
Thank you, Lisa. Yep, we have a really exciting panel today. If I do say so myself, I think it is going to be one of the best. We actually had a prep call that lasted a full hour, and I wish we had more time today, but again, we'll all be available for any questions. So I'm Kerry Curran, and I lead our marketing and growth at GroupM, especially for our Catalyst brand. I lead a lot of our thought leadership and marketing efforts, including a recent white paper that we just published specific to CPG, some original research that talked about both the consumer behavior and marketer behavior. So definitely check it out if you're interested. But I want to take a minute to have my panelists introduce themselves. Again, we have a diverse group of voices here and lots of really good ideas in thought leadership. So I think you guys all need to take yourselves off mute and take it away. Gretchen, you want to go first? Introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Gretchen Koch. I'm with Peet's Coffee. I lead our marketing and our innovation strategy for our CPG division. So anything that you're not receiving in a coffee shop, if you're buying it to brew it at home, that falls under my team.
Great, I can go next. My name is Brian Neumann. I am currently leading the meals portfolio at Kraft Heinz up in Canada. So excited to share some experience with the team.
And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Rowe with McCormick. I oversee digital experience for our own platforms, so our websites, our apps, etc. For all our consumer brands in the US and Canada, and then as well as our flavor solution side, which was food service. So it was really great to hear about that earlier.
So obviously COVID required a lot of fast brand pivots. And I think some of the challenges and successes depended on your internal team structure and how you were equipped. Can you each share some of your stories of how you were able to overcome silos or budget restrictions or team challenges to be successful during this time?
Kerry, I think you missed Suzanne.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself.
Oh, sorry, Suzanne.
No worries.
So sorry.
No worries. My name's Suzanne Darmory. I am a social media manager at an international global beauty company. And I actually had the joy of joining in the middle of COVID in April. So, so my experiences are very different and very interesting, and I'm excited to share them as well.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Suzanne. Brian, did you want to kind of share about some of the pivots you guys had at Kraft Heinz?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so I mean, I think that obviously COVID-19 took us all for surprise this year as far as the impact it had to the industry, and it really forced us to change our entire plan for the year. And by that I mean, so in my previous role at Kraft Heinz, I led the condiments, sauces, and dressings team, and one of our largest brands, Heinz, we had a plan all around the summer about driving consumers to patios. And in the middle of a global pandemic, that might not be a plan that would actually make any sense. And so we did have to pivot really quickly to understand, how are we going to adapt in this new environment? And thankfully, our structure at Kraft Heinz really enables us to. We run on a very lean team. And as such, we don't have a lot of hierarchy to be able to go through, or bureaucracy to go through. And because of this, we were able to really quickly pivot to really focus on conversations that are going to be more relevant for our brand. And so what we always often try to do is, find conversations that consumers are having and insert our brands into those conversations in a way that's authentic and relevant for consumers. In a sense, hacking culture to earn that attention. And one of the biggest conversations that was going on at the time when COVID was first happening is that everyone's stuck at home, everyone's in quarantine. And one trend that reemerged was the trend of puzzles, actually, funny enough. And you may not put two and two together to say Heinz ketchup and puzzles, those don't really have a lot of things in common. But as one of the most iconic brands in the grocery store, Heinz really has become a part of culture. Because of that, we tried to figure out a way that we could, put this conversation that's happening in the social space and align it with our brand. And we're often known for our slow pouring, iconic ketchup. That's one of our equities that we pride ourselves on. And so what we decided to do is we decided to take that equity and apply it to one of these trends that's happening in the social space, which is puzzles. And we created what we call the world's slowest puzzle, which was 570 pieces, 100% Heinz ketchup red. And so we launched this into social with a really scrappy social video, launched it across multiple different countries around the world to get the groundswell going. And we saw some really great results because of that, because we were able to find a conversation that was happening already with consumers, tapping into that with our brand in a way that was relevant and authentic. We were able to drive great conversation and had some really exciting pickup for us. We drove 1.3 billion earned impressions on this alone with a very small media spend against it. Had placement across Fox, CNN, Cosmopolitan, even Jimmy Fallon talked about it. And it was because of our willingness to, quickly look at our plans, say, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Find what it does make sense for our brands, what is going on in the space, what are consumers talking about, and pivot quickly by doing so in a way that allows us to test and learn, go and then grow. We were able to drive a lot of success. And so it was a great example of a time where we had to really quickly pivot and completely move away from our old plans because of the COVID situation.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a unique and creative way to capture your customer attention. And Gretchen, you guys had some good examples of how you kind of shifted engagement and provided real resources.
Yeah, so, with the pandemic and people no longer going into an office where they might be able to get their coffee in the office or on their way to work, they stop at a coffee shop. There's a lot less people driving to work, picking up a coffee on the way. We saw a big increase in sales of coffee that they would be brewing at home. And, if you don't normally brew at home or you only brew at home on the weekends, it's, you may have kind of one trick in your arsenal of how you're brewing coffee. But we realize that people are there every day and they're missing maybe out on their latte or other formats that they might pick up in a coffee shop or be able to get in their office. So we took content that we had already created. We had longer form videos with home brewing guides that we had available on our website and available on YouTube. And we really took those and repurposed them throughout on social media to really get people out to see different ways to brew. So a pour over, French press, how to cold brew at home, all those things that they might pick up in a coffee shop, they can now do at home or learn how to experiment with new formats. So we get very, very high engagement from a social media standpoint, and then it led to a lot of press pickup because media wants to write about what things you can do at home and new skills you can perfect at home. So it proved to be something that our expertise in coffee as a retail coffee shop and also as a coffee company, we were ready to go with this content, and really it just kind of picked up and took on a life of its own. And that's great because it's furthered our sales. We've created a reason for people to come into Peet's if they weren't in there already. So it's been very successful for us.
And you had shared some examples of how communication across the organization and kind of teamwork improved a bit. Do you want to kind of talk through that a bit?
Yes, absolutely. So Peet's coffee, people know it in many different ways. Some know it as their coffee shop. We're not, we have about 200 stores nationally. Some know it because it's served in their offices, and then others know it because they purchase it and brew it at home. So those are really distinct channels within Peet's. And while we do our best to collaborate and work together, I would say it was not, it was hit or miss. We definitely collaborate, but we're not always in sync. And I think we really had to focus in on working closer together and break down those silos. From the retail coffee shop perspective, they were focused on keeping the stores running. From an office coffee perspective, there were not offices open. And then from the CPG perspective, we were trying to stay in stock. So really, we all kind of had unique needs that we had to come together as a brand and communicate together in a way we weren't doing as successfully before. And I have found that that's stuck through all these months. We've have recurring meetings. We're checking in with each other a lot more. We're kind of coming up with a unified voice, which has always been the goal, but not always working so smoothly. So I feel like this sort of pushed us into that a little faster, or in a good way, that we needed. And that's something that I'm hoping carries forward as we all move along and move through this together.
Yeah, that definitely has been a common challenge of many of the brands I've spoken with. So I think that's helpful to a lot of the folks today. So, and one of the things that Scott just mentioned was talking about both democratizing insights and being responsive to customers and media. So Suzanne, do you want to share a bit about how your brands have tried to strengthen loyalty and kind of really integrate with the customer at this time?
Absolutely. So at the beginning of the pandemic, all the advertising sort of seemed the same. It was the same, and I don't know if everyone saw that one long commercial where it was every video, every stock photo, and it was the same music, that piano music that was mentioned before. The way that we sort of took that, we created more of a goodwill kind of advertising. So how you take everything and really target customers. Our customers are pretty much loyalist anyway, but how do you take the insights and how do you pivot? And what we were doing is we were creating, so we have two things. We have the in-office dermatologists in the labs, and then we have the at-home beauty care. So what we really did is we had to look to partners to create content and create customized content that people could do. So for example, the Peet's at home is that we were creating how-to videos. So how to do the products without the dermatologists, without the professionals there. And then actually, things like that, where we served up social media content that really talked to everybody through the platform, created a larger engagement rate. And we saw sales actually rise during the pandemic.
That's great. No, it definitely sounds like that customers have been responding to that really personalized how-to kind of instructional content. And Tom, you talked a bit about how you tap into kind of those consumer insights. Can you talk a bit about your sources of consumer insights and how you've been able to leverage that into some valuable, engaging content?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and kind of going back to the basics, search trends, and that's what is search today? It's Pinterest, it's Google, it's YouTube. So we started to tap into that very early on. That one confirmed what people were searching for, but also dispelled some myths we might have, or misconceptions we might have had. So, we looked at what they're searching for, but then we have this consumer panel of 400 home cooks to kind of get an emotional read. What are they longing for? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? So in bringing those together, what resulted in was really relevant content. So what were people searching for? So early on it was, I need to make bread. I can't find it in the store. I don't have yeast. So we're answering consumer questions about, all those basic how-tos and all these questions from all the new cooks that this has created. And then you bring it together with this human element where we couldn't run out and produce something with an influencer early on. But we were really well positioned, probably better than we even realized, with our internal content team to start really delivering the content. So one of the heroes for McCormick during those days, weeks, and months was Rachel, our food stylist. So she would take our insights and direction on what people are searching for, and then that night she would be creating all of this amazing step-by-step how-to content on Instagram stories every day. So it was this, while we were all sort of scattered about, the Baltimore metro area, we were probably more close than ever before. And those search insights have become foundational for how we move forward. I'm kind of blown away by just how nimble and quick we are. Like last Friday, there was a search trend on portobello mushroom. Friday night, Rachel was grilling up a portobello mushroom recipe. So really outstanding, and another way for consumers to connect with not just McCormick, but McCormick's people.
I love that. For everyone listening today, make sure you're listening to your search teams and search insights. I'm a little bit biased having a search background, but it really shows you're really able to tap into that quick consumer insight. So Tom, that was a great example. So Brian, you talked a bit about how you are hacking culture to kind of engage your customers more. Do you want to tell us a bit about the Kraft Heinz initiative?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I think that a lot of our strategy over the last, call it 12 to 18 months, has shifted towards something that we call acts, not ads. And it's where we really, show up in culture and do things versus advertise for things. And with the KPIs being more focused around how much earned engagement and earned impressions can we drive with things like that. And what a lot of the times we try to do is, and I mentioned this earlier, is try to find these conversations that are already happening in social and figure out a way that we can, participate in that conversation that makes sense for our brands, makes sense for our businesses. Because consumers will be the first to call BS when a brand tries to insert them in a conversation that doesn't make any sense. And so we're in a fortunate position, which a lot of our brands have become ingrained in culture. And so there's a lot of conversations happening naturally about our brands. And a recent example that we were able to achieve this is on Heinz ketchup, in which, Heinz ketchup traditionally comes in the glass bottle you see at all the diners. And there's that age-old question about, what's the best way to get ketchup out of the bottle? And as we started to look at this, we're seeing this conversation, despite it being a brand that's been around for over 150 years, it's still happening and it still pops up in conversation. And so what we wanted to do is, as opposed to, trying to bring our own conversation to light, we wanted to embrace that conversation and answer that age-old question in a way that would be clever, witty, in a way that only Heinz could do. What we ended up doing was we ended up taking our glass ketchup bottle and tilting the label so that when you hold it at the perfect pouring angle, the label was put upright. And the way that we activated against this is we went to a local grocery store up in Toronto and basically took all the glass bottles off a shelf, replaced it with this tilted bottle, had some cameras, and just watched and waited. And how we were able to create content that set up the challenge, showed consumers interacting in the challenge in a way that's witty with that little bit of Heinz wink. And because of that, we were able to drive some really great conversation. Because, while we are suggesting that the perfect pouring angle is 35.4758 degrees, that may not be what all consumers are thinking. And so we are able to instigate that discussion, that debate, that conversation in social, in which the best way, I slap the bottle, I shake the bottle, stick a knife in it, whatever it may be. And because Heinz has become ingrained as a part of culture, we were able to drive a lot of earned coverage and a lot of great pickup across a lot of media outlets about how Heinz is shaking up their bottles, even though it was just a very small social stunt. And so we've been really focusing a lot of our strategy on trying to find those opportunities in which we hack culture to earn attention and get a lot more earned impressions beyond what we're paying and putting into that. And because of that, we've been able to drive some great results together.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great example. In addition to how we've needed to kind of pivot to how we're creating content and how we're engaging our consumers, we've seen a lot of pivots in brand goals and KPIs and kind of top-down business result priorities. So Gretchen, can you share a bit about how priorities have shifted a bit for Peet's in response to kind of the sheltering in place and COVID changes that have happened?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, our office coffee business is not very active, and the retail coffee shops, while they remained open in California this whole time, other ones had to close, and then traffic is just down because people aren't going as many places, they're not stopping in the coffee shop. So, with that happening, starting in March, it became the expectations on the CPG portfolio, CPG business went up significantly. So there was definitely some shifting in expectations for our division. Along with that, though, we know that consumers were shifting to those products that they were going to brew at home, but we also needed to make sure that not only were we in stock where they were purchasing us, where else are they buying us? How else are they buying us? And so we increased our focus on e-grocery. So while we are available on Amazon and have been focused on that, there's a lot of ways you can invest to drive your e-grocery business. For anyone who's shopping click and collect, or even getting it shipped to home from other retailers besides Amazon. So we had to really start to think where are people going? Where are they buying us, and how can we meet them there? And have them find our brand if they were not necessarily looking for Peet's, they were just looking for coffee. So that's been a shift. It's accelerated that shift for us. We've obviously been looking at e-grocery, we've been spending against it, but it's changed significantly as our expectations and our sales expectations and goals have gone up.
Yeah, I definitely think you're going to see more digital grocery growing. Our research found 63% of Instacart users plan on continuing with Instacart, and they've seen exponential growth. So definitely sounds like you guys are looking in the right direction. Another big change we've seen is events, obviously, as we're here virtually, not drinking cocktails somewhere fun, as we usually are with Media Post. Where do you see, Suzanne, you talked a bit about how you guys have pivoted with events, and I know Gretchen and Brian, I think you guys talked about Major League Baseball, but Suzanne, tell us a bit about how your brands have pivoted with events, without events.
Absolutely. It's been very interesting. So it's everything from, the content photo shoots we have to do remote, to town halls, to we have big in, global meetings for, just mostly in Paris, sometimes in Switzerland. And I think the way that we've sort of transformed it is we've turned it from one in-person to a several day, like half-day meetings throughout, just to make sure everybody's in the same time zone. That's always a big issue, trying to sync up, people across the world and make sure that everybody can attend. As far as, next year, we're sort of planning into Q1 already. And I think, as far as we're concerned, events are on hold until we hear otherwise, which, so we're sort of pivoting. I think the hardest thing is doing a photo shoot remotely. I mean, that has been some learning curve that, we have to sort of work together really closely. And it took us a few months to really get that in sync, and how we can optimize and make sure that everything works smoothly remotely. So, yeah.
Great. And Gretchen, you talked about kind of your Major League Baseball contracts. How have you guys pivoted there?
Absolutely. So yeah, so our sports partnership contracts are multi-year. You have commitments, financial commitments, and you can't just say, hey, we're not going to pay you this year since there's not a lot of baseball. So we've had to really work closely with the Giants, and then we're kind of in that process right now with our NFL partnership to find ways to still get the brand benefits of these partnerships. So obviously, no one's in a stadium. We sell coffee in the stadium. They're not purchasing in the stadium. There's no one in the seats, so the signage impressions are different. And so, what are the other ways that we can get to those baseball fans? Fortunately, Major League Baseball, I think, has recognized this across all their teams, and they've really opened up and been us more opportunities that maybe were harder to get. So digital and social opportunities, collaborations that we weren't necessarily allowed or weren't part of our original contract have come out of this. And so that's been a big win. And it's also allowed us to continue to support the hometown team, because we obviously don't want to walk away from the team from a consumer standpoint. That doesn't look good, but from a relationship standpoint with the Giants, we want to continue with them. So but it's required us all to be flexible and creative on both sides of the table to find a way to kind of get value out of this and to provide value to us.
Sure. And I'm getting the notice from Steve that we're coming up on time, but Tom, I know wanted you to kind of lead the audience with how your team has kind of set up for success and leverage the nimbleness and agility needed. You talked about your kind of marketing excellence across the org, and I think that'll be valuable to our listeners.
Yeah, so we've been building the marketing excellence organization for a couple of years now, and what it's created is sort of service functions for the business. So I sit on the digital and creative team. What that's done is sort of freed us up to move really quickly and making sure we have the right resources in-house. We work with agency partners, certainly, but it's because we have creators on our team and we have insights people on our team, and we're closely connected to the insights function. that were all available, and you could, where something turned on a dime. And then it freed us up to try stuff. So once the plan blew up, we could do things like create a Spotify channel because in-home audio streaming was going up, or distribute our video content on OTT devices because so much viewership was going there. That structure, where we're focused on insights and focused on the data and ability to execute, allowed us to really pick up speed and react well during the crisis.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. So Steve, do you have some questions for us?
This is my version of lurking near the stage.
Yeah, I know.
Anybody who's been to our summits knows I'm infamous for hanging around on the stage with the microphone, and that's the cue to the moderator to go to questions. We do have.
I'm telling you, this panel needs more time. We've got some smart voices here.
Listen, that's a good segue into promoting the roundtables. You guys, I hope those of you on the panel will pop into the roundtable so people can interact with you more there. But for now, let me activate Mark Carlin. Mark, go ahead with your question. Tell us who you are and who you're with. You'll have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, I'm with Prestige Consumer Healthcare. Sorry to be awkward and confusing, but I did not actually request to speak.
Okay. I had to raise that from you. Okay, but I have a question. A lot of you were talking about, and some of you were talking about the ways in which you were working internally with one another much more closely than you had before. You were sort of talking to teams you never even had spoken to before. When it came to messaging, both for COVID and then, of course, afterwards with George Floyd's murder, the social unrest protests, there was much greater sensitivity about messaging, even though all brands were pressed to be more real time. Can some of you share some of the things you've learned or the ways you worked internally to make sure you got the messaging right, but you also got the right approvals?
I can definitely talk to that. That was something that was extremely prevalent for us. You know, we took a stand, like a lot of brands, on Black Lives Matters. We took a stand on Juneteenth. Like, we made sure that we were just really part of the conversation. And as a beauty brand, we wouldn't normally interject, but we felt strongly that we need to be part and take our stand on diversity, of all kinds. So we were really vocal about that. And I'm not sure that we would have been part of the conversation had it not been so prevalent, the need for it.
How did you work internally to make sure that you got it right? I mean, we know the messaging is critical, and the precision of the messaging in these circumstances is very critical. So how do you make sure you've got it right and you've got approvals up and down the chain that this is what you want to say?
We had quick approvals because we were all aligned. We sort of jumped on a call and said, we really need to do this. This is what the brand stands for. Especially as a beauty brand, that, we are for all skin types, all ages, all races. So it was very important. So we just jumped on a call and made sure that everybody, globally was aligned with it.
So I can also answer that one. So on the Peet side, we really brought in a variety of people beyond just the ones who would typically be handling brand communication. So, making a statement as it related to George Floyd or Black Lives Matter, has impacts from an HR standpoint. I mean, how do our employees feel about what we're going to say? How's the consumer going to react? So we really had a very cross-functional group involved in sort of developing an approach or how we might go about it. And then we also actually did an internal survey asking the broader Peet's organization their perspective on what organizations we should support before. So we went out saying we made a statement, and then we intend to support several organizations based on the input from our internal team. And then we went out and got that input. And then a few days later sort of made another statement about what exactly we were doing. But it was really an example of, it's not just the brand team coming out with a statement here, because this has so many stakeholders, so many people that are going to hear it and have an opinion, and an impact all the way down to, a barista in a store where a customer likes or doesn't like the stance we've taken. And so we really wanted to try to engage kind of all the way from top to bottom. So but we had to move quickly. I think we put out a survey and we were like, get back to us. And this meant, I think it was 2 days maybe that there was a response time. that we could get everyone's input, because consumers were looking for statements from brands, and if you hadn't done it in a couple days, what do you think? Why aren't you saying anything? Was the social media feedback we were getting if we didn't speak up? So it kind of forced everyone to act very quickly internally to kind of
What a great point about that. You have to understand the breadth of the stakeholders, including the people in your own company, for anything you're saying publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kerry, we have to break, but that's a great ending point, because we are going to have a roundtable at the end of the morning exactly on this issue of social causes and the ways in which brands relate to these public messagings around controversy. Kerry, guys, this was a fantastic panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.